Hello, a few quick thoughts before we go on with 1971, where things are really getting interesting, I think. With my video about which kind of albums would the Beatles have made, hadn't they broken up in 1970. A few things that I forgot to mention in the previous video about the year 1970, the alternate year 1970. Um, when the four Beatles released their solo albums in the second half of 1970, of course they will have singles also each, like 2 or 3 weeks before the release of each of the solo albums, they will have singles, and so that there's radio promotion for these great albums, great solo albums, and Paul is first because his solo album will be released in August 1970, so like in early August, so not to have a conflict with the Abbey Road album. It would be pretty much similar with what happened in the real 1970 when his solo album conflicted with the Let It Be album release. So let's say he has like Abbey Road will be released in early July or something, and his album in late August, and in early August he will put out a single. It can't be, there wasn't a single from the McCartney album, but even, the obvious choice, maybe I'm amazed, it can't be that, because this will be released by the Beatles in my parallel universe. So the next best thing on the McCartney album that will be the single for the McCartney album will be Every Night. I think Every Night would be a cool A-side, his debut solo single, and maybe Man Who Was Lonely or something like that would be the B-side. Then George Harrison, his It Can't Be Called All Things Must Pass, because again, Beatles already used that song. But on his solo album, I think the single that will be released 3 or 4 weeks before that could be the big single, My Sweet Lord, because the Beatles didn't use it. Like I said, the solo albums should be function as a kind of outlet for them to uh, to put out those kind of songs that maybe the others wouldn't be too happy about, and so these very spiritual songs about God, maybe it would be better for him to, like he did in his real solo career, to put him out on his solo albums. So My Sweet Lord will be a big hit also in this scenario, and also his All Things Must Pass. I should stop calling it All Things Must Pass. His solo album, maybe Vava or something like that, or Waiting on Your Own, will be maybe almost as good as the big triple All Things Must Pass. Of course, some songs will be missing because they will be used by the Beatles, but this gives it also the chance to be a more cohesive, more focused album. So my All Things Must Pass will be a single LP with only 14 tracks. I think there will be only one version of Isn't It a Pity. There will not be I Dig Love, because I don't think it's not on the same level as the other songs. I think I Dig Love is maybe my B-side to My Sweet Lord. And as I said, 2 or 3 tracks are missing because the Beatles used them, so it would be still a very cool 14-track album. Then very interesting, I think, the Ringo single, because I said in my scenario the Ringo Starr album will be a double album with Sentimental Journey on one album and Few Cups of Blues on the second, so only covers, with one exception. The Richard Starkey written song Early 1970 will also be on the album, and this will be his single. Early 1970 will be a song. In my parallel universe, it's not all roses, so the Beatles still could have had some difficult. Of course, with all the things that are happening at the time around them, there will be some difficulties, which will also result in these solo albums, but will not result in a split. So early 1970 could still be a thing for Ringo to write about each Beatle doing their own thing, and was the B-side to It Don't Come Easy, which is on my Abbey Road, but would also have been a great A-side. I think it was even on Ringo's in the real world, on Ringo's first Best Of album, Blast from the Past. Although it was a B-side, it was on this Best Of album, so it's one of his best self-penned songs, I would say. And John, who have I forgotten? I've almost forgotten John. And as I, made an insert that I was wrong when I said some of the Plastic Ono Band tracks will be used by the Beatles. I rejected no. It could be exactly the same Plastic Ono Band, so one of the best Beatles solo albums will still be exactly the same album, although the Beatles won't split up. So wow, that shows what a genius he was, that he could give the Beatles great songs and still have the exact Plastic Ono Band. So what would be the single for Plastic Ono Band? In the real world there wasn't really a worldwide single release out of that album, but I think I was never a big fan of Working Class Hero, but it would be a good solo single, like a mission statement. My two favorite tracks on that album, like with most people I guess, are God and Mother. So those would also be contenders. So they would have great solo albums with single hits before they reunite for their 1971, which this video will be about now. Now we arrived in 1971 with my the Beatles albums that never were but could have been, an alternate scenario of albums that could have, in my strange mind, could have materialized hadn't the Beatles broken up. We are now in 1971, so really the first year, also according to the official, like it happened, the first year where they were separated. Not in my scenario, but in the real world. It would start off in March 71 with at this point pretty much all singles are double A-side singles because they have so much great material in the early 70s, all Beatles. And it would be a double A-side single with What Is Life by George on one side and Backseat of My Car by Paul on the other side. In July 1971, another single, which would be the single that announces the next album, and the single is Imagine with Eat at Home on the B-side. Strange to think about it, but I think Eat at Home would be a brilliant B-side. Maybe that wouldn't be a double A-side in this instance, because Eat at Home isn't on the same level as the song Imagine, but it's a fun song and it would be a great B-side to the very earnest Imagine to have Eat at Home on the B-side. September 71, they would release the next album, which is called Everest. And I was inspired to do these videos by that guy from the As It Should Be video channel. And he called his 1970 Beatles album Everest. I didn't nick this from him. My list, I made my thing like 3 or 4 years ago. But it's a logical title for post-Beatle album to all Beatle nerds, because as we all know, the Beatles intended Abbey Road to be titled Everest initially. So I also have my Everest album, but it would be a different thing because it would be from 1971. And it would start off with Too Many People. It's always a thing with songs like that. Those songs would have never happened had the Beatles stayed together, because Too Many People Too Many People is an anti-John Lennon song, of course. Maybe they had, in my scenario, maybe they had some fights, but maybe Too Many People is hinting in that maybe it's a slightly anti-John, but maybe it's not that. It's not that brutal song, but maybe it's a more subtle. Maybe in my scenario, the lyrics would be a bit more subtle about the difficulties with each other, or maybe the lyrics would be about something entirely different. Maybe about Alan Klein. Maybe at that time they would have already fallen out with Alan Klein in order to stay together. Maybe this would be about Alan Klein. I don't know. But Too Many People would start off the album. Jealous Guy would be track 2. Bangladesh. I think that will be an interesting thought for the rest of the year. Go on watching that video. Bangladesh would be track 3. Back of Boogaloo would be track 4. Again, probably an anti-Paul McCartney song. Maybe the lyrics would be different in my world, in this world. Track 5, again, 71 was the year where they were at each other's throat, especially the three, Ringo, George, John versus Paul. So the next track is Crippled Inside again. One could argue not a very nice song about Paul, but like I said, this is a fantasy scenario and it's such a great song, it has to be on that album. Crippled Inside is track 5, Behind That Locked Door is track 6, Dear Boy is track 7, Uncle Albert Otmar Helse is track 8. What a side, that would be a masterpiece already. Side B would start off with Oh Yoko, then track 2 on side B would be Another Day, track 3 I Don't Wanna Be a Soldier, track 4, Monkberry Moon Delight. Track 5, The Ballad of Sir Frankie Crisp. Track 6, Give Me Some Truth. Track 7, Long Haired Lady. Many people say it's the weakest track on Ram. I don't. I think I always liked that song. And track 8 is Oh My Love. Very strong album, you know, if you think about it. Maybe if you're really a geek, just make a playlist in that sequence. I know I did it. I did it on Spotify like 2 years ago when I made that list. I think it flows together really good, that album. And you know, in this scenario, the songs would, of course, not just that the lyrical content would be different because of different experiences they had, but you know, also musical, all these songs would sound even better because they would have the Beatle magic, they would have the harmonies, they would have, you know, a Paul song would have ideas by George and John and vice versa. So those songs would, just if you make a list on Spotify with the solo songs, it would sound great, but just imagine it as a really different approach. Beatle songs recorded by the Beatles with George Martin as a producer would sound even way better than the released versions. And then I said Bangladesh is going to be interesting, the track on the album. You know, in my scenario, unfortunately, still there would be the humanity crisis in Bangladesh, the war, and the Beatles, as peaceniks, of course, would object to that, and they would put out in October '71 the double A-side single Bangladesh, Power to the People, and they would make, and this would be the first real big live appearance. Also in my scenario, they wouldn't start touring again, it would be still too much of a hassle for them, but you know, for special occasions, and this is obviously one, they will. And so there's a concert for Bangladesh featuring the Beatles, and not just as a band, but the other groups on that concert would be the John Lennon Plastic Ono Band, so you know, a solo set with solo songs by John, Paul McCartney solo, maybe him just on acoustic guitar, in that scenario there aren't really wings. George Harrison with an all-star band, and Ringo Starr with an all-star band would also sing solo songs or songs that aren't Beatles songs in sets. I think they would have, you know, in this scenario, this would be one of those outlets why it would function, that they still could be together as a group, because they wouldn't be chained together. They would have also room for, you know, exploring things as individuals with their solo sets. But there would also be a Beatle concert in the concert of Bangladesh, plus special guest stars Bob Dylan, Ravi Shankar, of course, Billy Preston, Badfinger, you know, whatever you want. And then in March '72, a Bangladesh movie with the concert and a triple live album concert for Bangladesh would be put out. And the triple live album concert for Bangladesh would be, one LP would be the Beatles show on that concert, one LP would be the best bits from the 4 solo Beatles shows, and the third disc would be the rest, you know, the best bits from Ravi Shankar, Bob Dylan, and so on. So that would be March '72, and I think we will go on with the rest in the next video. Thank you very much for watching.